Hi, today we're going to take a look at making tables and formatting them, inserting tables, and then making a graph. And for this particular set of data, I've already got everything all typed in. So I wanted to show you, though, automatically when you're typing into a spreadsheet, they put the numbers, it automatically formats the numbers to the right side of the cell and text to the left. So you can obviously change that by selecting your text, and then you can go up to this line segment. So it's very similar to if you've done this in Word or Excel, but this little symbol, or even in the Docs app, so that centers everything. If I want to put borders, there's a shortcut to borders that I can do that and select, or you can select various colors and thicknesses, but that's good enough. Notice that when I'm putting in data, especially for making a graph, what I want to do is title each column, but also I put the units at the top, and then that way I can just put pure numbers in these cells, because when I'm making graphs in a sheet, in a spreadsheet, I don't want to have text in with the data cells, because then it's not going to plot correctly. The other thing is, our temperatures in this case are supposed to all be to 1 decimal place, and that's obviously not the way these are showing up, because even if I were to type in 95.0, it's not going to keep it that way because spreadsheets don't know about significant figures. So I'm going to highlight all this data. You can very easily use these shortcuts. Notice this is decreasing decimal place, this is increasing. And so that makes all of them, forces them all to be 1 decimal place. So again, make sure that your data is correctly formatted and represented. If I'm going to copy and paste this into a document for the sake of turning in as a lab, you want to make sure that everything looks the way it's supposed to look. So for this particular lab, this is the time and temperature data. We don't need to worry about inserting this into anything, but just wanted to show that to you for formatting purposes. So to make a graph, typically in science, we want to look at X and Y plots. So I want to have, here's at X, here at this X value, here's what Y is, and so forth and so on. So we've got the independent variable and the dependent variable. And so to make a graph, I'm going to select the data. Notice I'm not selecting the text, the headings. And there is a way to deselect that when you get into making the chart, but I prefer not to select it in the first place. So select all the data that I want to plot. Typically, you want to put whatever's going to go on the x-axis in the first column, whatever's going to go on the y-axis on the second column. If you're working in Excel, it's a lot easier to switch if you have them in the reverse order typed in. It's easier to switch it when you're making the graph. Not so much in Google Sheets, at least not that I'm aware of. So it's better just to type them in that way in the first place. So selecting all the data, just the numbers, and then I can go into Insert, Chart. Your other option is on the shortcut menu. You see the same chart icon over here. And that can get you to Insert Chart. Insert Chart. And something's happening. There we go. Okay, so it gives you recommendations. I would rather you click on chart types and just make sure it's giving you the type of chart that you want. So you should be using what's called a scatter plot, and the scatter plot, unfortunately, in Sheets doesn't allow you to connect the dots, but we're going to use that one anyway. So make sure it's selected and scattered. We don't want the giant bubbles. That's weird. It's useless. I don't know who would use that. So there's a scatter. The other thing we want to do before we hit Insert, you can always come back to this customization, but if I click on the customization tab, I can actually then type in my title and my axes titles, because you don't ever want to have an unlabeled graph. So the title, usually just indicating what the graph is of. So we've got, actually usually you put what's on the y-axis first. So this is temperature versus time for stearic acid. So just to very specifically label. If we want to have a legend, if we had like multiple graphs, we could select that here and put it in different spots. I'm going to scroll down. So for the axis, for the horizontal axis, I want to label that. So this is my time. It is in minutes. So I'm going to label that with units. Hit enter. Then I'm going to do the left vertical axis. So this is temperature, and it's degrees Celsius. It's not going to let me do a superscript to put in the degree mark, but that's good enough. Scroll down some more. If I needed to change these axes, like if you actually wanted to read the numbers off of here, you could put in minor grid lines, and so that would put in markings between between these major grid lines. Let's see here. How do we insert that? Again, you could adjust how high up, like if this wasn't zoomed in on your data enough, and minor grid lines, you know, if I want to select that for every one. So notice those grade lines come in. You don't need to do that for this one necessarily. And of course, Sheets doesn't let you select, you know, anything besides, well, I guess you could, oh, I see, they have the number of lines. So if you want to specify how many lines you want in between, whatever, you don't have to do that for this one. And then scroll down. If you ever needed to put in a trend line, you can find that down here. We don't need to do that for this. And then we can just go ahead and hit insert. So there's my graph, and you can shift this around. So like if you wanted to print this page to turn in, you could do that. So there's my graph, and then you can analyze how are the numbers changing. We do see a couple of points here where for a couple of minutes temperatures remain constant. You'll be asked some questions about that. If I have to insert a graph or a table into a document, here's how to do that. So I have a Google Doc open right here. I'm going to select my data table. So let's say I was making my lab report. I can copy this, just select everything that I want to put in and paste. Again, the formatting that I did in the sheet, it's probably easier to format in the sheet than over here, but that formatting remains. If you have a very long table, you might want to you know, work it into 2 columns side by side just to not waste a bunch of paper, because this is a bunch of empty space. But that's fine enough for now just to see the example. Again, if I wanted to format, if I want this graph to be in the center of my page, you know, this is showing that the text is centered in the cells. I could also go into not more, but under table, this is where we can go to table properties, and then I can do my alignment if I want to put that in the center of my document. There we go. Same thing for the graph. So I wanted to insert the graph. I can just select it. This is where you could get back into advanced edit if you forgot to label the axes. You can go back and do that here. And I don't want any of those things. Just let me copy it. Edit, copy. There we go. And then we will come over here and I'll press paste. And it's thinking about it. Let's put it on this page. If I wanted to format this so it ends up all on the same page, again, you could, you know, this is obviously not down as far as it can go. And I could shrink this, so you can always resize this if necessary, and eventually should be able to work this onto the same page if I, again, if I wanted to. Again, that would only be necessary if you were doing a lab report, if you wanted to resize things. But that is how to make a graph, a scatter plot, if you don't already know how to do it. It's very similar if you do it in Excel. Excel's a lot easier to work with, but we don't have that readily available to us. So there's making a graph, making a table, and inserting it into a doc.